Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Random Crafty Acts. My name is Barb, and I am a obsessional card maker. I focus primarily on very basic cards. I do a lot of work with card sketches, and what we're going to do today is help me finish up a small stack of scraps that I had after a whole bunch of card making that I've done. I'll link some of those videos in the description below. Okay, so this is like way more math than usual for me, but I came up with this design. Okay, I'm sure it's similar to something you've seen someplace else. If you've seen this someplace specifically, please put something in the comments below so that I can go back in and give credit to whoever this came from. But I'm going to walk you through this design, and this is basically how the card comes out. Okay, this is what's referred to as an A2 size card, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. You take your 8 1/2 by 11 piece of cardstock, cut it landscape wise at 5 1/2, and you get 2 of these. Okay, that's why I do these instead of 5 by 7s. All right, I like a secondary layer, this primary background layer, which is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. Okay, and I have a specific way that I also cut those. All right, I take an 8 1/2 by 11, and again, I cut these at 5 3/8. Okay, that's the long length. All right, and then I cut a second one so I can get 4 out of one piece. All right, and I save these strips because I use those for other things. I do, there's a couple of card designs I do when I get a whole bunch of strips like that. And then I cut the 4 1/8. All right, and then you cut the 4 1/8 and you end up with another strip. And when I'm working like this, I tend to just go ahead and cut the whole sheet, and I set them to the pieces that I don't use to the side. All right, the other color that is the most common that you'll see in my stuff is black. I buy 65-pound black cardstock wherever I can find it, especially on sale if I can get it. Okay, all right, so these will go in this background. All right, so that goes there. All right, and then the next layer is 3 3/4 by 5. Now, another dimension that you sometimes see brought in here is 4 by 5 1/4. And if you do that, then you get just this really thin mat there. But I'm using this 3 3/4 so that I get a little wider border, 3 3/4 by 5. Okay. All right. Then the next thing that I've done on this card, all right, is I put this piece in the center here. All right, and then you know those pieces that we set over to the side. All right, one of those goes there. Okay, and then I cut these using my silhouette, but that's a 2-inch circle, and that goes here. And then I'll put my sentiment circle in the middle. And I'm going to do some work with a grid, which is not something I usually do. All right, so let's start actually putting this one together. I'm going to grab a couple of sentiments, and I'm going to leave this right here while I'm doing that in case you want to take a screenshot. And again, if you have seen that sketch someplace, like I said, let me know. I'm starting to try to keep track of what I do with some of these card sketches to make it a little easier for me. Okay? All right, so A2 card, this mat, this mat, the strip down the center. And these strips, if you're working with 6x6 paper and you cut the 4 by 5 1/4, okay, this is the 2-inch piece that you have a tendency to have left over, or at least I had in the last batch of cards I made. Okay, this strip down the center, this is part of your embellishment section. Okay, and then I'm going to show you a way to save on cardstock by doing that strip down the center, and then you put your embellishment circle out in the middle. All right, so when I'm doing this, I do everything on this piece first because it's got the most work on it. And I'm just using this grid here so that I can line up with the centerpiece here. Okay? And since this is what they refer to as ombre paper, I think, because you have like the lighter color and then the darker color. And if you can see on the way this grid lines up, I can hit the inch on the other side of this. Okay? And I'm using Barely Arts liquid glue. This was some double-sided paper that I got in a, I don't know, I go on mad buying sprees like a lot of us do, and I don't often really remember where I got stuff. I've been working out of my stash for a while now. Okay, and then you can just turn this over. Okay, line your scissors up and cut right up against there to cut that piece off the bottom. Okay. All right, and now I'm going to put this back here so that I've got that lined up. Okay, so let's talk about this piece that goes down the center. One thing you can do, this time we're just going to lay this right here and glue it, and then we're going to make another one of these here in just a second. And I'll show you the other thing you can do. Okay, so you lay this, and you kind of put it down the center. And I use liquid glue because sometimes I need to scooch something over a little bit. I buy these pads at the Dollar Tree. Here where I am, they're $1.25. They've been one of the more helpful things I've had. There are lots and lots of things with grids on them that you can get. But these have worked really well for me. Because when they get, I always have one that usually there's a tag on it that says keep clean. Okay, and then I balance this in the center here. Okay, and then I put the circular center in here. All right, and most of the time that dries clear. Hopefully that will be the case here. This is probably one of the hardest parts, is making sure that you get that. And again, there are some amazing tools that make this part a little easier. I'm going to see if I've got my... if you are old like me, you remember using a typewriter eraser, and that's what these are. Okay, all right, and then this goes on my card front, so I'm going to lay that there so I can show you while we're talking about it the other thing you can do that will help you. All right, so I get that lined up. So that looks like the center. Okay, so that goes down the center there. And see how that didn't quite line up? So I can just pull that off. I'm going to turn it this way and see if there was a reason that I wasn't doing it that way. Okay. The ink is probably the glue. That's my thing that I have a tendency to do for reasons I don't understand, is to call that an ink bottle. Okay, that's better. I'm going to cut this off the bottom. Okay, and lay this back on here. Okay, when we did that before, okay, we need this in the middle, which means that we don't need a whole piece on the top and on the bottom. We need about that much. Okay, so I'm going to cut this and take a pencil, since I can use either side of this. Okay, I'm going to lay this here. And you're basically just, the centering is not important at this second. Okay, so we want to cut it there. I always have trouble finding my pencil mark. Okay. And then this is a way not just to preserve cardstock, but also to use some scraps. Okay, some of those little bits and pieces that you end up with that you have trouble throwing away, there's a reason to do that. Okay, so we get that, and again, that didn't quite line up, so we're just going to take it off. Let me get my 2. There we go. I wasn't lined up on my 2. Okay. And then in lining up this one at the bottom, this is another point where I try to use a ruler. All right. Because at this point, it's about making sure that this cooperated a lot more the last time I did it. That piece and this piece are lined up the same. Okay, and cut that off the bottom. Okay, so now when we put our piece in the middle, we can preserve this. See, we have that, it covers that hole. So something to keep in mind then is I probably could have got by with a little bit less. All right, so it gives me the ability to use smaller pieces of cardstock for those strips. And that concept that we just used, that works for all of your, anytime you're dealing with a sentiment strip where you've got something in underneath it. Okay, and then we're going to line this so that falls in the middle there. And I use wet glue so that I have what's referred to as wiggle room, which is something, I see a lot of people use double-sided adhesive. It's just a choice, okay? And in my case, it's a little bit of a skill because that's not something I'm very good at, is making sure I have it exactly where I want it. Okay, I'm trying to kind of leave this on the screen at times in case you want to take a screenshot. All right, folding these, this is what the stack that I keep to make the card bases with. This is 110-pound index weight cardstock, white cardstock. I found out the hard way back in the beginning that there is a difference between index weight and cover weight. Cover weight is exactly what it sounds like. Even if it's the same 110 pound, it's heavy enough that if you were making a booklet, you would put that on the cover of the booklet, okay? Which you can use for cards. I use it because I bought like 400 sheets and I'm still trying to use it up. Okay, you just take these, you fold it. I just match the edges up and feel it with my fingers. And I use my nail folder. I said, I just run my nail down the base of that. Okay, and I put this on here. And so then this, when I count a previous video I made, I had 3 cards that I made with these strips down the center. Okay, and I can tell you that when I look at this, I can see that this is a little crooked, but I'm pretty sure whoever gets that card is not real likely to recognize that. Okay, but this didn't go in there quite as well as it should have. So let's not look at it. Okay, so then we have 3 of these. All right. And then the other thing I always do is these are this is a stamp that my granddaughter made and gifted to me. I donate all of my cards to Cards for Kindness, which is run by scrapbook.com, and I will put a link for that below. This says Random Acts of Kindness Studio. I do not have a business. This is the studio refers to the studio I have here off my husband's workroom. I'm having a good stamp day. I probably shouldn't say that. You say that, right? And that's when something goes wrong. Okay, so I put this on the back of all my cards. So, like I said, Cards for Kindness, scrapbook.com. The link will be below. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I would really appreciate it if you would do that. I focus on beginning card making, so I have a tendency to provide a lot more detail and instruction and ideas. And everything I know how to do, I learned out here on YouTube from incredible card makers. And so I just think it's a wonderful activity. It's a wonderful idea, and I really I like being able to help people out when they're getting started. Okay, so 3 cards out of 3 pieces of scraps that were left over, and this card sketch. All right. Thank you very much for being here. Check the description below. Go ahead and leave a comment. Click that like button. I'm just trying to push these videos out onto YouTube. All right. Thank you very much.